Well, hey, everybody. Hello. Hello. I thought we'd just be interactive, that's all, and we would have some fun while we're here. Thanks for joining us for this panel of Reconnecting Communities. I am just honored to be with some amazing guys who are doing some amazing work, and we're looking forward to having not only an impactful conversation, but we're looking forward to having what we think are nuggets and seeds that will be left behind so that we can all take them from this place and go grow. Because I think I saw on the billboard words like building and bridging and skilling and upskilling, reskilling. We're going to talk about those things. The first thing I want to do is give a disclaimer and say to super producer Artie, who is somewhere in this building, thank you for allowing us to have some time at Smart Cities and for building an amazing experience and event. Second thing is, I shared a stage with these guys a few weeks ago in Martha's Vineyard. And I made a terrible mistake. I spent 6 days in Martha's Vineyard and not 6 minutes at a beach. It's a problem. So I refused to come to Miami and not have some beach time. So I intro with that, and that's my disclaimer. And I want you guys to introduce yourselves. They can see you on the board, but I'd love for you to give a minute and introduce yourself. Let's start with you, Devon.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Yes, my name is Devon Henry. I am the CEO and president of Team Henry Enterprises. We're based in Richmond, Virginia. We are a company with a portfolio of construction and logistics arms companies. We do general contracting work. We are a primarily healthcare, higher ed in that space. But probably what we have been known for over the last couple of years is, if you know anything about Richmond, Virginia, it is the former capital of the Confederacy, and our company was the one that removed all of the Confederate monuments in Richmond, Virginia. Yeah.
Nick?
Yeah, good afternoon. Nick is Jean-Baptiste, and I agree with Chuck. You can't be close to the beach without going to it. So I make it a point to put my toes in, every time I'm by the beach. So between now and sunset, it's going to happen. So before you fly out, it's going to happen. We'll do it together. Again, Nick Jean-Baptiste. I am the founder of Jacmel Growth Partners. We are a private investment company where we partner and invest in so many different ways with founder-owned businesses. And we just really help founders really achieve their dreams, which is to take the businesses to the next level. And we think about the growth and creating wealth in many different ways, which in particular includes with the employees with whom we operate with and with whom you candidly really grow your businesses, and also with the local communities. So I look forward to talking more about how we think about community partnership and how we think about really bridging so many different gaps out there.
Got it. I'm gonna be very, as you guys know, unorthodox. So we're just gonna talk a little bit, all right? I want to first know, you both were on the phone when you came into the building. Who were you talking to? And what were you talking about?
You want honest answers on this?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Don't y'all want an honest answer, anybody? I think we deserve an honest answer. Okay.
So I have a sophomore daughter in college now, and she was calling me, asking me, could she use the Amex to buy something? I mean, this is what it is.
Okay. All right. I'll come back to that.
Yeah, I was on a different call where I was trying to use someone else's Amex. It's a pretty big Amex. We're looking at buying what will be our 12th company tomorrow. And we had an all lawyers call to go through and just understand what's outstanding and what we need to do. I'm having dinner tomorrow night with my sellers, and I told all the lawyers that you're not going to embarrass me me showing up to dinner and them not having their money. So that was my call.
Got it. Don't y'all feel better now? We know them, right? The reason I ask this question is because, and I'll refer back to Artie, because she says a couple of things. One is your daughter ought to be able to see who she can be. Second thing is be where you are. So I'm going to start with you, Nick. And when you walk into this place and you think about the work that you've done, especially, I'm going to put you on the spot, some of the work that you've done at airports where, and I think I told you before, there's some airports I cannot fly in and out of without smiling while I'm walking because I know he did the work. And so I want you to talk about some of the work that you've done and being where you are right now.
Absolutely. And so I will say in terms of the airport work, I'm a finance geek, so I click on computers. So I haven't built anything in a very long time. But there's a lot that's just really special about being in this city. First off, I was born in Haiti, so I'm pretty darn close to where I was born. I grew up in Orlando, son of a preacher, Haitian pastor, so I'm pretty close to Orlando. And I just love being around here. And I think something else that should really hopefully resonates, particularly with the local community, is that my firm's name, we named it Jacmel for a reason. So Jacmel is a small beach town in Haiti where my dad is from, and my mom is one generation removed. I was born in Port-au-Prince. And so whenever I come to Florida, especially Miami down here, you get in a taxi cab and it's a Haitian driver, right? It just feels so warm and so homely. And you just think about ways that you can be helpful. In terms of other kind of partnerships down here in Miami, one of my very good friends is Beatrice Toussaint, who runs the Florida office of the NMSDC. And so for many years, I'd come down to Florida, work with her minority-owned companies to just help them think about how to pitch themselves better to investors. So that's also something that's really, really special. The last thing I'll say in terms of a additional work perspective is, in May, we invested in the largest diverse-owned airport engineering services firm in America. With 250 employees, we've done work most airports around America. We've done work in Miami. We've helped rebuild Tampa's check-in areas. So we've designed all these different airport works. And so now I walk around and I fly in, and I just see the amazing opportunities to better the different airports. So today, flying out of Philly, it was a long line. And I called up my CEO. I'm like, man, we have work to do in Philly Airport, which we go to do work at. So I'm trying from the computer. I'm trying my best.
We're going to invite you to come up to the front and chastise. Let's just, please, right? Come on.
Yeah, but to wrap it up, I think Miami and Florida to me is very personal. The work we do at airports and infrastructure is also now very personal because we're here to really improve lives all around.
So let me stay with that for a minute. When you are improving lives, I want to think through the paradigm shifting and changing now. Both of you, I'm sure it has impacted your businesses with workforce. Describe where we are, where you are right now as it relates to workforce. And I mentioned earlier whether it's upskilling or reskilling or it's where are we now? We hear labor shortage, but depends on who you ask.
Right. No, okay. Absolutely. So I think about workforce as being the driver of all our businesses. We invest in companies that are heavy human-based for many, many reasons. And so all of our assets go home every day. And so it's really the workforce that really drives our work and how we operate. In terms of workforce development, and let me pull back a little bit. As we talked about in Martha's Vineyard, my industry of private equity, where we actually invest in, candidly buy control of businesses, really tends to get a bad connotation and it leaves a bad taste in people's mouths. But the way I think about it is that behind the government, private equity is the largest employer in America, hands down. And so we have a lot of folks who live in New York, where I live, who are actually controlling people's lives, right? Helping put kids to college, helping take care of elderly, et cetera. And so as we, as owners of capital, are more mindful of our employee base, there's so much we can do. At Jacmel, we pride ourselves on 3 aspects of work in terms of workforce. One is upskilling. So we go around, we partner with an amazing impact invested consulting group that looks at our workforce and helps us think about how do we make this workforce better. And even if that being better means they leave us and go off to better pastures. We also think about our workforce in terms of benefits. How do we make sure our employees have best-in-class benefits? I mentioned I grew up in Orlando as Haitian, so we didn't have medical insurance. So there's no way we're going to touch a company where we're not going to fix that issue because that impacted our lives personally, especially dental. And the third thing we think about workforce too is how do we make sure everyone wins whenever we win? And so we create many different options, including making sure employees are part owners, right? Whether it's a small amount or a large amount, how do we do that? A company of ours yesterday, and just so excited that our CEO is taking this initiative, on a call yesterday, we just gave all of our employees a 2% bonus. I didn't even know it was going to happen, right? And so that's how we're really infusing into the businesses and the owners and the teams. It's really about your people. So we don't have an employee issue with most of our companies. And the more we talk about it, the more we brag about it, I feel bad for our competitors because they're going to have more of an issue. We're going to make our place the destination of employees.
Good stuff. I almost thought I heard you were clapping. Stop. Okay. I think I'm in jest saying that because when you are reinvesting, not only in the community, but reinvesting in people, you see that rippled over and over and over again. I want to talk a little bit about, and I think you guys are such a representation of both smart and equitable. If I get too deep, just tell me to stop. But peel back a little bit and tell us, because you had some really hard work. It was hard because, as I understand it, you even had threats with you and your family with the work that you were doing. So peel back and take us through the moment of when you got a call, when you accepted, when you began the work, and what was your reflection point now looking back at that work?
Well, that's a lot. I'll say that on June 2nd, 2020 was when I got a call from the governor of Virginia. And he said, "Hey, Devon," and if you remember what was happening in 2020 in the summer, it was, the cities were in an uproar. We were dealing with the death of George Floyd, and he saw this as a time, or the administration saw this as a time that, can you take down this monument? And he said, if we don't do it now, it's probably never going to happen. And I thought for a second and said, wow, that's a big ask, but if not me, then who? And if not now, then when? But because of the nature of what we were doing and the what we have read and what we heard, Charlottesville wasn't too far. It's like 60 miles up the road. A young lady was killed over statues. In New Orleans, someone had their car blown up over being the contractor that was taking down the statues. And so I knew it was something that I just couldn't say, yeah, no doubt, we're with it, versus talking to my family, talking to the team, and getting a better understanding of how they felt, as well as what the ramifications would be. So when I talked to my family, my son, who's 13, 11 at the time, is like, "Dad, you never ask us about, the work that you're going to do. Why are you asking us now?" And I said, well, because it's a little different. And the work that we typically do, we have an office here in North Miami. We support the government, the United States Coast Guard as a client. And so very mundane type operations, right? We're building latrines, barracks, things of that nature. So we also do other type of general contracting work, but we knew this was going to be different. Ultimately, we accepted the challenge, but to Chuck's point, no matter what the job is, no one should feel and receive threats against their life, for their family or for their team for doing a job. And so ultimately, we end up taking down 23 different statues across the Southeast. It wasn't without, you waving at us? Oh, he's waving at you, Chuck. Okay. Ultimately, we took down 23 statues across the Southeast, and it wasn't without a journey. We ultimately decided that we wanted to turn that negative into something positive. And if some things that you've heard around here is the Web3, NFT world. So we turned the removals of these monuments and turned them into NFTs and selling them for nonprofits to raise money for different social causes that have impacted Black and brown people for decades. So we started that entity. Things have been extremely interesting, if you will, from, hey, Devon, you're a construction guy, but you're also trying to raise money for nonprofits. So, and I'll leave you with this because the journey and the story is very interesting. But when we talk about equitable infrastructure, we talk about equitable projects. You know, we also are a builder of affordable housing in Virginia. But one of the most meaningful projects that we've done outside of when you talk about the statue stuff is we actually built a memorial. And so on the campus of the University of Virginia, they decided to recognize the folks that actually built the university, and that was on the backs of slaves. And so we built the memorial to enslaved laborers on the campus of the University of Virginia, which turns out to be our most meaningful project because it gives a voice to the voiceless and recognize those who have not had recognition for centuries, really. And so when we talk about equitable, right, and we talk about being able to tell a story through construction, through infrastructure, we're very forward thinking in some of the projects that we're pursuing that are going to be more meaningful, that are more telling, reimagining spaces, right, public spaces for sure, that will tell a story, a true story of what's happening here in our country.
So I'm going to call an audible in a minute, and I'm going to ask Andy. Absolutely. I'm going to ask Andy to grab a mic right there, and I'm going to ask you to hold tight right there for 1 second. When you speak about meaningful work and telling a story, okay, both of you have an opportunity to tell stories all the time through not only the work that you do, not historical stories, but stories that go forward, right? You're investing in company and people's lives. You're investing in places. All three of us, people, places, and partnerships. Talk a little bit about what is the story forward and not just the story backward.
Yeah. So again, I think about a lot of it comes down to things that are near and dear to all of our hearts, which is literally jobs, right? How do you ensure people can feed their families, have a good home, et cetera? As we move more towards investing in infrastructure services, whether it's folks who are doing cybersecurity in different places around America, like we're going to hopefully close on tomorrow, or Aurora Engineers that is helping with Terminal 1 rebuilt in JFK, which broke ground, I think, last week. What I find most exciting about the Terminal 1 project is if you look at all the press, there are 10,000 new jobs being created to support one terminal being built. If you look at America, there is so much money being put towards infrastructure, which means there are so many new jobs being created, so many ways to go ahead and make sure that we're just doing better. And there is a hard focus, and I preach this all the time, that with so much money of taxpayer money going to rebuild infrastructure, with very, very soon the majority of Americans are going to be minorities. We should have majority of the new jobs being created, majority of people touching these projects to also be minority, because that's literally our money. So we should be reinvesting back into our communities. We should be building new jobs. We should be building new schools. So that's why we get very excited about infrastructure and how we can use this opportunity to really build our communities back up.
Seated next to you can I dare say you're a Miami homeboy? Is that right?
Yeah.
Is that right?
A little bit.
So we wouldn't dare come in your city and not ask you to say hello.
Sure.
That's why you got a seat on the table. Would you please introduce yourself, Andy?
Thanks, Chuck. Sorry to be late, folks. My name is Andy Ingram. I'm the president and CEO of the National Association of Black Hotel Owners, Operators, and Developers. And we own about 2,500 hotels around the country, including our latest acquisition, which is the Trump Hotel, former Trump Hotel in Washington, D.C., which is now the Waldorf. We also own the largest hotel in Washington, D.C., which is an 1,175-room Marriott. And we've got about 5 different hotel projects in Miami. But I think that what he said is exactly right. Infrastructure money that's being spent. We're the second largest industry in the country. Thanks for all of you folks coming here to spend money at the convention center. We own a hotel right down the street called the Gabriel on 6th and Ocean. And the first black-owned hotel that was built on South Beach is the Royal Palm, was sold. It's now owned by another African-American company that is the second largest hotel company in America called Park Hotels, that's run by an African-American. So to the point about infrastructure and job creation, we have a commitment to developing in the urban core. And when we look at the urban core, who are the majority of folks in the urban core? They're minorities. And so our goal is not only to own the asset, but to ensure that when you walk into our assets, you see people that look like the majority of America in the next couple of years. And our commitment goes beyond creating jobs, but building wealth that can be generational, changing wealth, as we do in the hotel space.
Don't stop there. Keep going. How do you reinvest?
Easy. For example, a program we do at HBCU schools. We're committed to building hotels on HBCU campuses. Everybody heard about the $20 million that went to Howard University. I should tell you about the $1.5 million that we just put together for Morris Brown, where we're going to build a hotel on that campus. So when we look around communities, whether it's Miami Gardens, if you'd asked me 10 years ago, and anybody here from Miami Gardens, make sure, good. If you'd asked me 10 years ago, would we invest in Miami Gardens? 15 years ago, we would not have been inclined to do that then. Today, it's one of the hottest properties in the country. At the stadium, we're currently negotiating to put a black-owned hotel there. We look for infrastructure projects and a continuation of regentrification where we can play a role. We can play a role from a number of advantage points. Number one, think about the pride in ownership. The $650 million that was just raised by one of our group members, Raul Thomas, is incredible for an African American to raise that sort of money. But we've got people like A-Rod in the deal. We've got people like Mayweather. But most important, we have people like the president of Hilton Hotels International. Our hotels are typically branded hotels around the country in the Caribbean. And so when we look for reinvestment, we look for partners, we look for, thanks to Miami Gardens, cities like Miami Gardens. In Harlem, who ever thought that the tallest building in Harlem will be owned by an African American right next to the Apollo Theater that was actually dying because it didn't have enough activity? What we did when we built that Renaissance Hotel there, we connected it with the Apollo Theater, and we said we would sell that so we can get groups like you guys coming into a city and holding conventions. So we've just brought a creative aspect to a money-making aspect to help empower our communities and look at where we should have development from us. How do we raise the bar? If we raise that bar, think about the tennis, the Grand Prix, what the Dolphins are doing. Miami, and when you think about Miami today and you listen to Monday Night Football, they don't say Miami anymore, they say Miami Gardens. And that's the start.
So back at a earlier day, don't lose your thought. Back in an earlier day, when I served in a public capacity, here's what we heard all the time. What you're doing over here, why can't you do it over there? Hello, Mr. Mayor. And you hear this all the time. So the investment dollars, the tax dollars, the equitable dollars that are being generated, I see it all happening over here, but I don't see it over in my neighborhood. Why can't that happen? You got some of that, and I want you to speak to what your company is doing in an equitable space and making sure that we're not just being smart, but we're also being equitable.
Well, I think that's a great question, and before I answer it, I just want to make sure I get this out there that I chair the board of the largest HBCU in Virginia, Norfolk State University. So when you start talking about hotels going to HBCUs, I just want to make sure you bring that money on over here to Norfolk State.
Wait a minute, hold on. Andy, before you got here, man, he was talking about giving us all American Express cards. And did anybody
You
remember
missed that part.
There's tape. Go ahead.
You missed that part.
Yeah.
But the that's a really great question. And so in as I mentioned, I live in Richmond, Virginia. We just announced a very large and pretty much groundbreaking development, $2.4 billion development deal that's going to include a ballpark. It's in an area that's typically been overlooked. But to your point about how do you make sure that this part of town gets the same thing as this part of town, you have to be intentional about it up front, right? You have to have the folks at the table that's going to say, okay, you're talking about supply diversity or you're talking about inclusion from a supplier side, but let's also talk about making sure there is no apartments being built unless there's a component of affordable housing or workforce housing. That is, you can't have development these days without some sort of component of workforce housing. Those things were very intentional up front. We have a very forward-thinking mayor that said that we will not have a development deal unless these certain things are in this deal. So when you talk about access to capital and you're talking about different developers coming in, we wanted to make sure in Richmond that, and I keep saying we like I did this, but I feel like I've been working hard with folks that are in Richmond to make some of these things at the forefront of what we're doing when it comes to development, but that the equity part of these deals, that the minority folks, they have an opportunity to play. Typically, they get the crumbs. They get, hey, we're going to spend money over here, and then if there's something left, this is what you get to do with over here. I think the word is intentionality. I think the word is being progressive in thinking of how do we inclusively come together to say, these are things that we must have for a better city, for an inclusive city, and for an equitable city.
Chuck, can I add something to that? I think it's elected officials that can set the stage.
Yeah.
In every deal where we have public-private partnerships, and one of the best examples is that 545-room hotel, the Marriott Marquis in Washington, D.C. It was the legacy of Marion Barry that said, I wanted to have black people involved in the deal. So the issue that when we look at the sort of intentionality, it made good sense. We're not there to get the crumbs. We're there because we can actually create, with the help of elected officials, that if they intentionally say to us, we want to be there, like yourself. In Norfolk, Virginia, one of our board members, Warren Thompson, gives $1 million a year to Norfolk, and he obviously runs the largest food service company in the country, where we not only made a commitment to giving money to programs, but we also went a step further. If we hire local kids, local people, local employees, and we find that they have the commitment to do the business that we're in, we will then become their equity partner by putting up the cash for them to get into the business and own their own restaurants. So that's intentionality.
It is. Nick, Nick, I want you to jump in because don't lose your thought, but would you please also speak to what you're doing with companies by taking executives and moving them and placing them and positioning them for success, for growth tracks?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I've been trained by HR to understand what you can or can't say. But I will say that, yeah, exactly. I will say that when you are in the business of acquiring businesses and you are buying the majority of it, you can then make a lot of decisions or influence. The phone call I had right before I came here on this stage was to talk to one of my CEOs about how we're going to hire this national recruiting firm, and we're going to launch a new CFO search. We're launching a new head of engineering search. We're launching a new head of HR search. And he's diverse and I'm diverse. There's a high likelihood we know how this is going to end with those hires. And so we have the ability to go ahead and make these kind of decisions because you are, not only are you in the boardroom, you literally are the board, right? And so you make decisions. It's been happening for centuries. So it's about time for us to do so. But let me go back to the point that was just made. And I think that Devon made a very good point about partnership. And so did you, sir. You don't have your name tag up, so I don't remember it right now. We have a very easy solution to this, right? People created hub zones a long time ago to try to move jobs into different locations. While you guys were talking, I was realizing that come tomorrow, companies that we manage the majority of will have 35 offices around America. They're all asset-light businesses. We have a facility in Miramar that does document scanning. We have 13 other locations supporting 300 employees around America. Do you know how easy it is for me to build another location? $40,000. So with partnership with City of Dallas, we moved the facility in the City Hall to convert all of the documents in the real estate department. We said we're going to only hire locally, right? One of my friend who runs our Office of Impact says you're going to basically, eat your own dog food. City of X, Y, and Z says you want to work on new jobs, new X, Y, and Z, whether you want to hire returning citizens or whatever it is, partner with local companies, and we own them, and we will literally create the jobs you want. And we'll do so with upskilling. We'll do so if you want more technology training for the employees. There's so many programs out there, but it really starts with city managers and city halls and just spending the time in conferences just like this, saying that if we're the owner of these businesses, we can decide where the job growth really happens on either side of the track.
So I want you guys to take, we got just a couple of minutes left. I want you guys to take each, and I'll start with you, Andy, and work our way back. Speak to now and speak to later in this context. If you look at our subject, it suggests that we are not connected. It says reconnecting. So in the context of reconnecting, what's now and what's next?
I think his point, it's critical as owners of our business that we can make some real interesting decisions. The call I was on right before is similar to what he did. In the hotel space, I found out that 12% of all the alcohol that's consumed in this country is consumed by black folks. Yet there's only 200 black spirit companies. So we developed a program with Pronghorn, with Diageo, the largest liquor company in the country, committing $20 million, Bacardi doing the same, so that we can help change the equation of us just being consumers of alcohol, but being equity owners. And we said to the Hiltons, to the Marriotts, we own the hotels. We understand there's a procedure, but we want to connect today so that 10 years from here, we're not doing what we're doing today, trying to figure out how to put a woman in charge of a major corporation. We want to set the stage. So working with partners like these gentlemen and partners like Smart Cities and mayors and city managers, we want to start the process, I should say, move the process further by taking and making intentional decisions that we can do with our assets. I mentioned our assets. Hilton, Marriott, Hyatt, we'll take Hyatt out, IHG, don't own any hotels. Hotels are owned by people like myself, these gentlemen, folks like you in the room. They are the investors. As an owner and as a CEO, I can make a decision to work with a mayor, a city manager to say, let's do something. Let's make sure that as he moves around CEOs, because there's 5 black GMs in this city, in this area. That's a travesty, and we're going to do something about it.
What's now and what's coming? I go to number of small businesses in America, 32 million. That controls, I believe, about 70+% of employments in America. I think it's really figuring out ways to partner with small business owners. And this is not only venture capital and super high-end, high-tech. If you look at the number of jobs being created by those businesses, they're not the majority creators of new jobs in America. It's really your average small mom-and-pop businesses. And so it's really creating paths for growth. understanding paths to get into whether it's different supply chains. I think your idea is incredible. And the reason it's so incredible is because you literally can control where dollars are being spent. So for me, the path forward is just making sure that other owners of businesses, other influencers, other folks who are allocating capital understand that we can actually influence things to create the future we want to see. So that's what we do every day, and just excited to keep on doing that.
Yeah, I love those answers, and I think when you talk about reconnecting, you got to think, well, where did the disconnect start, right? And we can go all the way to Tulsa, right? We can go where I live in Richmond, where in Jackson Ward, and in many other urban communities that there were highway systems ran right through communities, right? So it starts with acknowledgement of what's happened, right? It starts with acknowledging that there are things that we can do to right some wrongs, and let's do them, right? It goes back to being intentional. It goes back to, hey, we understand what happened wherever year it was. Here we are today. We have folks that are willing to invest in these communities. We have forward-thinking administrations. Let's get it done, and let's get it done in a very equitable way. Because equity has not been used in the same sentence many times when you think about these communities.
So there was a king who sent his army out to discover what world was left. And they went out and they found what they thought was the end. And they put up a sign that said "Knee plus ultra." They came back and reported, there's nothing else. And he says, there's got to be something else. Go back. Sends them back. And when they get there, they indeed find that if they had gone a little bit further, they would have found that there was indeed more beyond. And so they had to change the sign from knee plus ultra to plus ultra. Watching these guys, there is more beyond. Reconnecting communities. Oh, I got to teach y'all something before we leave. All right. So you guys can stay with us on this, but you'll get this. This will help you with like next panel stuff. Okay. So shift to the left. Just shift. Trust me. Shift to the left. Yeah, you shift like this. Got it? All right. Now, shift to the right. Got it? Last one. Try to sit up straight here. Okay. So when your person in the back of the room tries to tell you politely you are out of time, and they've shifted over here, and then they've shifted. But this is the final one. When they sit up like this, it is truly time to go. We've had a ball. Thank y'all for allowing us to be with you. Guys, y'all are great, man. Good to see you there.